The story of the popular Sodom and Gomorrah is of strange interest because after the flood, where God promised that he would never destroy the world, God had to come by himself to pass judgment on these cities. Sodom and Gomorrah were two neighboring cities widely renowned for their distinctive sins, including homosexuality. They were ultimately destroyed by God due to their wickedness. Their story parallels the Genesis flood narrative in its theme of God's anger provoked by man's sin. They are mentioned frequently in the prophets and the New Testament as symbols of human wickedness and divine retribution. According to the biblical book of Genesis, the notorious cities were destroyed by brimstone and fire because of their wickedness. The exact nature of the damning wickedness of the cities has been the subject of debate. Traditionally, Sodom and Gomorrah have been associated with homosexual acts, though modern scholarship has proposed that it was the inhabitants' inhospitality that gave offense to God. But can that be the only reason they attracted God's wrath in that manner? Are we not seeing the truth behind the whole story? Could this story be a warning to the present generation? Like and subscribe to my channel to be a part of the community of knowledgeable Christians and help me promote my videos to the world. Also hit the bell icon to turn on notifications to be the first to know when my videos come out. Let's delve into the origin story of these cities and how it all began. In the Genesis narrative, God discloses to Abraham that Sodom and Gomorrah are destined for destruction due to their serious sins. Abraham pleads for the lives of any righteous people living there, especially the lives of his nephew Lot and his family. Abraham started negotiating with God on behalf of the righteous in the two cities. God first agrees to spare the cities if 50 righteous people can be found, and eventually agrees to spare them if 10 righteous people can be found, in Genesis chapter 18 verses 23 through 32. Two angels appearing as men are sent to Lot in Sodom, but are met with a wicked mob who asks for the newcomers. Lot offers the mob his daughters instead, but this only further enrages the mob, who are then struck blind by the angelic guests. Finding only Lot and his family as righteous among the inhabitants, the angels warned Lot to flee the city quickly and not look back. As they flee the destruction, Lot's wife looks back on the city and is turned into a pillar of salt. This is found in Genesis chapter 19 verses 12 through 29. Sodom and Gomorrah, or the cities of the plain, have been used historically and in modern discourse as analogies for homosexuality. They are the origin of the English words sodomite, a derogatory term for male homosexuals, sod, a British vulgar slang term for male homosexuals, and sodomy, which is used in a legal context under the label crimes against nature and bestiality. This is based upon Christian interpretation of the biblical text, interpreting divine judgment upon Sodom and Gomorrah as punishment for the sin of homosexual sex. Many contemporary scholars dispute this interpretation in light of Ezekiel chapter 16 verses 49 and 50. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore I did away with them, as you have seen. But to understand this portion of the Bible, we need to know what the abominable things mentioned mean. The exact nature of the damning wickedness of the cities has been the subject of debate. Traditionally, Sodom and Gomorrah have been associated with homosexual acts. The mob of men demanded for Lot's visitors, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, so that we may know them," in Genesis chapter 19 verse 5. The term know has often been interpreted as carnal knowledge, and many believe that the widespread homosexuality of the inhabitants is what leads to their downfall. Additional biblical references to Sodom and Gomorrah, such as Jude chapter 1 verse 7 mentioning sexual immorality and unnatural lust, along with the description of abominable things in Ezekiel chapter 16 verse 50, are considered as reinforcing evidence for this perspective. The sins and wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah had reached up to heaven, but according to the scriptures, God did not plan to destroy. He wanted to come and see what was happening by himself. Genesis chapter 18 verse 21. I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I will know. But on getting to Sodom and Gomorrah, they were welcomed by a mob that wanted Lot to hand over his visitors to them, and this was the culmination of the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah. Notice the wording of this passage in Genesis chapter 19 verses 4 to 9. They wanted Lot to offer them the angels in the form of men as sexual playthings. They had no interest in sexual relations with women. After Lot offered them a heterosexual alternative, they then decided that they would now forcefully seize and rape Lot. There were likely many cases of rape in Sodom, and it seems clear that all the men of the city except Lot, and perhaps his sons-in-law mentioned in verse 14, had become bisexual or preferentially homosexual. They were homosexuals with a strong knack for violence. As we continue in this video, we will find out that immorality is not the only sin perpetually committed by the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. We will now go into the whole truth. Later Hebrew prophets named the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah as adultery, pridefulness, and uncharitableness, therefore stressing the cruelty and lack of hospitality of the inhabitants of Sodom to the stranger. Rabbinic writings affirm that the Sodomites also committed economic crimes, blasphemy, and bloodshed. Other extra-biblical crimes committed by Sodom and Gomorrah included extortion on crossing a bridge or swimming a river, harshly punishing victims for crimes that the perpetrator committed, forcing an assault victim to pay for the perpetrator's bleeding, and forcing a woman to marry a man who intentionally caused her miscarriage to compensate for the lost child. Because of this, the judges of the two cities were referred to as Shakrai, liar, Shakurai, awful liar, Zayafi, forger, and Mazal Dina, perverter of justice. Eliezer was reported to be a victim of such legally unjust conduct after Sarah sent him to Sodom to report on Lot's welfare. The citizens also regularly tortured foreigners who sought lodging. They did this by providing the foreigners a standard-sized bed, and if they saw that the foreigners were too short for the beds, they would forcibly stretch their limbs. But if the foreigners were too tall, they would cut off their legs. The Greek myth of Procrustes tells a similar story. As a result, many people refrained from visiting Sodom and Gomorrah. Beggars who settled into the two cities for refuge were similarly mistreated. The citizens would give them marked coins, and once the beggar died of starvation, citizens who initially gave the beggar the coins were permitted to retrieve them, provided that they could recognize them. Providing bread and water to the poor was also considered a capital offense. In an incident involving two girls, one wealthy and the other impoverished, both went to a well. The less fortunate girl selflessly offered her jug of water to the affluent one, who in turn reciprocated with a container filled with bread. When this became known, both were burned alive. According to the book of Jasher, Paltith, one of Lot's daughters, was burnt alive in some versions for giving a poor man bread. Her cries went to the heavens. Another woman was similarly executed in Admah for giving a traveler, who intended to leave the town the next day, water. When the scandal was revealed, the woman was stripped naked and covered with honey. This attracted bees as the woman was slowly stung to death. Her cries then went up into the heavens, the turning point that was revealed to have provoked God to enact judgment upon Sodom and Gomorrah in the first place, in Genesis chapter 18 verse 20. Lot's wife, who came from Sodom, had disapproved of her husband welcoming the strangers into their home. Her asking for salt from neighbors had alerted the mob which came to Lot's door. As punishment, she was turned into a pillar of salt. Rabbinic tradition described in the Mishnah as postulating that the sin of Sodom was a violation of conventional hospitality in addition to homosexual conduct, describing Sodom's lack of generosity with the saying, "What is mine is mine, what is yours is yours." An extensive study of the story of Sodom emphasizes the violation of hospitality as well as the violence of the Sodomites. Homosexual rape is how they violate hospitality. Jeremiah chapter 23 verse 14, where the sins of Jerusalem are compared to Sodom and are listed as adultery, lying, and strengthening the hands of evildoers, and Ezekiel chapter 16 verses 49 and 50, which defines the sins of Sodom as pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her and her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. And they were haughty and did toeva before me, and I took them away as I saw fit. Toeva was used instead of abomination to emphasize the original Hebrew, which he explains as being more correctly translated as taboo. It is clear now that Sodom and Gomorrah did not just commit a sin related to sexual atrocities, they had a long history of sin that had been piling up. These two cities truly had a history with everything related to wrongdoing, and the cries of the unjustified got to God, thus resulting in instant judgment. That's all for today. Thank you for watching again. Kindly like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue blessing your screen with amazing videos like this. See you next time. Cheers.